Thank you for joining us. My name is Kim Daniels. I am a licensed customs broker and the CEO of Mercantile Logistics and International Trade Incorporated. Today, we're going to discuss global trade disruptions and how events on the other side of the world can affect your business and your supply chain. So there are certain things that are happening right now. This is such an appropriate time to discuss this, that are affecting everything worldwide, from the pandemic to a traffic jam in the Suez Canal. All of these things can be a serious headache for importers, exporters, anyone involved in international cargo trade. We're also going to talk about the U.S. Trade Representative's Office and specifically what their role is in deciding how to basically try to make other countries comply with our own requirements. And we're also going to discuss the difference between tariffs and taxes. So as we know, Ever Given, it's right there, was stuck in the Suez Canal this week. And it took a few days for it to get dislodged and released. And we're not going to discuss exactly how that happened, but we do know that because it happened, it had a massive effect on global supply chains. So if you're an importer, if you're an exporter, if you got rolled on your shipment, which everyone knows means has been delayed to the next week or the next month, any kind of rerouting discussions, all were plaguing your existence and probably still are, because this is an effect that's going to continue for several weeks into the future because of the massive backlog that basically occurred in the canal because one ship was blocking everything up. This affects many importers and exporters in various ways. As I said earlier, your shipment that you were expecting to come from China seems like it would be a direct shot from Yantian to Long Beach, and you're not wrong. But the problem is that the the vessel that they were waiting on from, whatever shipping line it was to pick up your container and bring it here was on the other side of the Ever Given in the Suez Canal. So that's definitely been hurting a lot of the timelines that people are trying to work with. The pandemic also has had a huge effect, not just because people got sick, not just because, we were trying to get a vaccine out into commerce or into the general population, but largely because everyone stayed at home and started doing projects and things and started ordering online. And so at the very beginning of the pandemic in March of last year, everything came to a near halt. And then 6 months later, everything was like pushed as far as they could when it came to so much volume. In my company, we increased our bookings 400% in 1 month. And we're a small company, so it wasn't that many more shipments. But if we're a microcosm of everyone else is pushing theirs 400% too. So we have this huge backlog in the port, which is, as I read, as of the 29th, which was just this past Monday, there were 24 vessel ships still waiting to be unloaded. Sometimes we get a little bit of relief. Chinese New Year provided a little relief because there wasn't as many vessels coming over, but it definitely wasn't enough to be able to catch up to the backlog. So there are several variables that affect shipments, and they may seem to be completely inconsequential. They start off at a raw goods site, and it could be, let's say, coffee. And there's a plight amongst those coffee beans. Well, now it's completely set off the entire coffee market. Increasing prices, reducing supply. Demand is always going to be there because I don't know about you, but I love my coffee. So you just don't know exactly what's going to happen and how you're going to get your product. Fluctuations of shipping costs. When petrol prices go up, so do shipping costs, and not just for the truckers on the ground, but also for the carriers on the ocean and in the air, because all of that affects it. Trade wars actually have a great effect on supply chains. So that is definitely a direct effect. Everybody recognizes it. But what sets off that trade war may not. It may not have even been considered. Trade actions to try to prevent, inaccessibility later. That's usually why they take place, is that we want to make sure that our countries can still access the market without hurting our economy. And that's usually why any country employs some trade action. And of course, there's always politics, which we won't get into. The human variables have a huge effect, more directly than indirectly. Lack of drivers, in my experience, has definitely a bad effect on small businesses. So, you're waiting to get an appointment and it can take several days to. You're already hitting demurrage costs, which is storage. You're looking at trying to find a driver who can get that appointment at the time that it's available. And especially when there's a huge backlog in the port, you're at a big disadvantage unless you happen to have a driver who is dedicated specifically to your company, which most companies can't afford. Lack of personnel due to illness. I mean, the pandemic definitely showed that. Long Beach Port did really well with their measures and making sure that, they didn't have many people getting sick. Only 2% of their staff actually reported as ill, which is amazing when you're talking about 16,000 people. So being able to take those actions that the Long Beach Port did, I have huge respect for them to be able to keep it mitigated to that low of a number. And then backlogs, as we talked about, is such a huge effect, direct effect on the supply chain, because not only does it affect the importers, it also affects the exporters, because if those vessels aren't getting unloaded, they're also not getting reloaded. And that can be a huge problem. And the vessels that are getting reloaded are not just getting reloaded with empty containers to go back to their origin, but also with full containers. And this could be a lot of agricultural products that we export. So, you got to be cognizant of the fact that there's not just one factor when it comes to trade, or, if goods aren't coming in. There's a whole lot of different things that are just hard to control. So U.S. Trade Remedies is actually run by the U.S. Trade Representative Department. And when trading partners start behaving badly, they have to take some action, right? So it's, hey, we're not going to let you bully us around, so we're going to do this and bully you back. So when a country decides to dump goods at a lower value than they actually should be onto our economy, that's called anti-dumping. And so we end up putting this anti-dumping duty on it. Or they countervailing is when the government actually, government of the origin country actually supplements that cost to that company, and that creates more problems for our economy. So we do what we can to make sure that those actions from the origin country are mitigated as much as possible. Sometimes creating alliances that can negatively affect us is another reason for the USTR to stand up and take notice and make some suggestions. So, if you know anything about the Belt and Road Initiative, you know that is a big number of countries that have basically signed up with China to be partners. And you understand why they're doing it, but at the same time, what does that mean for our market and our accessibility? So USTR gets together and tries to figure out what's the best way to mitigate the risk there. And then any other country working against our interests, and that's where sanctions comes in, and we'll discuss that in a minute. So they advise the executive branch on specific actions, Section 301 and Section 232. 301 and 232 basically take into account specifically how the national security is affected when it comes to trade. So typically tariffs and trade actions are controlled by Congress, the legislative branch. It's in Article 1 of the Constitution, says specifically that they are responsible for tariffs for any kind of trade into the U.S. But if the executive branch feels that there's certain trade actions happening that are working against us and is violating our national security concerns, then we can implement these other sections. Another branch of the government works under OFAC, the Office of Foreign Asset Control. There we go. They operate with sanctions, and they'll impose sanctions on specific individuals, specific companies, or specific countries. They're not really USTR, but they definitely take notice if things are happening that are going to cause us some problems in our national security sphere. They also control ITAR and other issues. The ITAR is the International Trade and Arms Regulations. So OFAC does have definitely a hand in that. And then any other exports are going to be controlled by BIS, the Bureau of Industry Security. And you have to make sure that whatever you're exporting is in compliance with all of that, and that you're following all the rules of permitting if necessary, and getting your shipments and your sales done properly. So yes, tariffs are taxes. They're just more specific to the industry than they are to the larger population, although it affects everyone in the population. So with taxes, everyone pays them via their payroll as income tax, sales taxes, vehicle taxes, road taxes, depending on where you are, state taxes. But everyone also pays the tariffs, just in an indirect way. Tariffs are charged to importers. Importers sell their goods to the consumers and pass along that cost, and consumers buy those goods at the asking cost. But unfortunately, and I'm going to try to move out of the way here, when they discovered how the Section 301 and 232 were working, they discovered that $460 billion worth of goods were taxed under these two remedies, which cost consumers nearly $57 billion in a year. It was just an annual cost. So that's a lot of money. I have been reading a lot about how the current administration plans to move forward with these Section 232 and 301s. And right now they don't plan to change it at all. Pretty sure they're liking the revenue because honestly, there is no mechanism in place for China to pay them. So here's from this particular article, here is exactly what was paid in 2019 for the additional duties. And it is a lot. I mean, that is a lot. It was between 7.5 on list 4A until list 4A in 2020 increased to 25%. And so this is what we have. So pretty much everything right now is at 25%. There's a few exceptions and exclusions that are around 7.5%. No, China's not paying the tariffs. As I said earlier, there's no mechanism that allows for it. All the duties are being paid directly by the importers or through their customs brokers. Some importers have moved their suppliers to other countries in Asia, so it doesn't create US jobs. They've decided, they have decided they're going to break up a decades-long relationship. And they're not going to, because it's taken them a very long time to get the quality that they want from the suppliers they currently have, and they don't want to start over. So if you follow this link, there's actually FAS.org has done a phenomenal job of stating academically what has happened with these tariffs and how it has really been significantly ineffective on getting, bringing more jobs to the U.S. Hasn't really worked that way. On bringing, any kind of balance to the trade deficit hasn't really worked that way. So it's a really interesting article for how countries are able to, or how the country was really not able to get very far with it. I'm sure that some companies have benefited from it because smaller companies have gone out of business because they can't afford these additional tariffs. But when implemented draconianly the way that they are, it really has had a largely negative effect on US trade and the US economy. So as I was talking about earlier, some of the trade actions that are taken are anti-dumping and countervailing duties. If an investigation finds predatory pricing, then the USTR is going to put in some solutions. In 2012, under the Obama administration, they added anti-dumping tariffs onto solar panels, 24 to 36%. And then Europe followed suit, and it sort of worked. Basically, it meant fewer people were importing solar panels. And if they couldn't afford it from the US manufacturers, they weren't going to buy them anyway. However, what happens whenever this goes on is the country comes back, the country that's been affected comes back with retaliatory actions. And they say, hey, you know what? You do us, we'll do you. And unfortunately, this tit for tat trade actions really don't help consumers at all. There are definitely better ways to come about it, but you have to reconsider how we approach those trade relations. Something that happened during the Obama administration was the Trans-Pacific Partnership was under consideration. And so we decided, as the US decided not to enter into that agreement, many other countries did. And as I understand it, China's been considering it as well. So that may be causing some problems in the future. So we have to really consider when we decide to pull out of these partnership agreements that we've agreed to that have basically affected other things such as the USMCA. When we decide not to do it, what kind of effect does that have overall? We definitely need to consider a better data capture. Supply chains, by and large, there's very little data regarding them, at least on the back end before the losing warehouse or before the losing factory. We don't really know the raw goods side. We don't know anything prior to the fabrication side, and that needs to be tracked a little bit better. We need to work better to our strengths. We are a highly agricultural economy. The Section 232 and 301s, that, especially the 301s that affected the Chinese goods, caused a retaliatory action by China against our goods, such as soy. So, this really hurt our farmers. So we need to figure out a better way to work together with our trade partners and not this enemy fighting sort of thing. And then most importantly, I think what would be really great would be a grassroots manufacturing effort for small businesses, but with large business tools. So shared foreign trade zone is a thought that I've tried to put together in the past, but is just, I don't have that kind of money. But you can put together a foreign trade zone as a magnet zone so that more people than one company can use it. And then you can basically develop out new products, try them in your local community. And if they work, then scale it out. If you have a certain products such as fashion products and they don't work really well here, you can send them to other countries without having to worry about a duty incurrence and see if they work there. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think if all the powers that be got together and said, let's figure out solutions and not add to the problems, I think we could really pull our minds together and get ourselves into a better situation when it comes to international trade. So that's it for me. You can contact me here. I'm usually here all day. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm happy to answer anything that you have regarding any trade related questions. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a pleasant rest of your day as well as a really good show. Thank you. Have a good day.